For centuries, the idea of ancient flight has been confined to the borders of myth. Yet across the oldest civilizations, from India to Mesopotamia, from Egypt to the Andes, we find recurring descriptions of aerial machines, celestial chariots, and crafts that moved, like the sun, across the firmament. Among them, the Sanskrit word Vimana stands apart. It does not translate as dream or vision. It means vehicle, specifically, a vehicle that travels through the air. References to Vimanas appear in the Rig Veda, the Ramayana, and later in the Samarangana Sutradhara, texts spanning more than 2 millennia of human thought. They describe flying machines equipped with domes, hatches, and propulsion systems driven by liquid metals and fire from the center. The accounts are consistent in mechanical detail, yet separated by centuries of authorship, suggesting a tradition based on observation, not imagination. Some researchers, cautiously independent from mainstream academia, propose that Vimanas were not mythic allegories but remnants of a lost technological epoch, one that preceded our recorded history. Within this framework, mercury-powered propulsion and electromagnetic control are no longer poetic metaphors but prototypes of an ancient scientific language, now buried beneath theology. Archaeological sites in India and Central Asia have yielded artifacts that, though classified as ritual objects, exhibit geometrical patterns reminiscent of turbine blades, gyroscopic chambers, and even insulation rings. When reconstructed in digital simulations, some of these designs demonstrate potential for lift and rotation, primitive echoes of aerodynamics long before the Wright brothers' fragile glider touched the wind. This convergence of myth and mechanism challenges our linear perception of progress. Civilization, it seems, may not have advanced in a straight line but in cycles, rising, collapsing, and re-emerging with fragments of forgotten science. The ancients, who carved the sky into their temples and mapped the stars with impossible precision, might have understood forces we are only beginning to rediscover. If the legends of the Vimanas hold even a fragment of truth, they would represent not divine miracles, but the remnants of human or pre-human ingenuity, a technology so advanced that, over time, it was mistaken for the work of gods. Perhaps the real question is not whether such machines once flew, but how much of their memory still lingers in the myths we continue to tell. The technology described in ancient Sanskrit texts defies modern classification. The Samarangana Sutradhara, a 1,200-year-old treatise on architecture and engineering, devotes an entire section to the construction of a Vimana. It outlines propulsion powered by liquid fire, systems of iron containers filled with mercury, and mechanical wings controlled by levers that move the wind. For centuries, such passages were dismissed as mystical allegory, until modern researchers began to recognize striking parallels with principles of plasma propulsion, ion acceleration, and magnetic field containment. The mention of mercury is particularly compelling. In modern science, mercury vapor has unique conductive and electromagnetic properties that could, under certain conditions, generate lift through ionized rotation. The same element appears repeatedly in ancient sources, from the Indian Vimanas to the Roman fulgurators and even the Mayan metal of the sky. Across cultures, separated by oceans and time, mercury is described not as decoration but as the heart of movement, a fluid engine of light. The idea that early civilizations might have harnessed such energy is no longer a question of fantasy, but of interpretation. Advanced metallurgy existed thousands of years before its accepted timeline. The Damascus blades, the Baghdad battery, and the Ashoka iron pillar all testify to an understanding of chemistry and corrosion resistance that modern metallurgists still study. It is not inconceivable that a parallel understanding of electromagnetic force could have arisen in isolated centers of ancient knowledge. If Vimanas existed, their builders would have required not only advanced materials, but also the ability to manipulate energy fields. Some texts refer to the Shakti, an inner force that allows the craft to move, without resistance, as a thought moves through air. Such descriptions resonate strangely with current theories of field propulsion, movement generated by shifting electromagnetic vectors rather than thrust. What today's laboratories explore with superconductors and ion thrusters, the ancients may have expressed through symbols of divinity. The recurring cross-cultural imagery cannot be easily ignored. In Mesopotamian reliefs, winged discs descend toward the earth, guided by figures holding rod-like instruments. Egyptian carvings depict what appear to be bulb-shaped objects connected by cables. In South America, pre-Columbian gold models resemble aerodynamic aircraft with stabilizers and tail fins, too advanced to be functional toys. These artifacts, scattered across continents, speak a common language of geometry and propulsion, as though fragments of a single forgotten civilization were scattered across humanity's memory. Yet perhaps the most extraordinary evidence lies not in artifacts, but in the myths themselves. The Mahabharata recounts a war in which Vimanas unleashed weapons of fire brighter than 10,000 suns, consuming entire cities. For decades this passage was dismissed as poetic hyperbole, until 20th century physicists began to speak in the same terms when describing nuclear detonation. The soil at Mohenjo-Daro, an ancient city in the Indus Valley, shows vitrification, partial melting of stone, consistent with extreme heat, though no volcanic activity occurred in the region. Coincidence, perhaps, or perhaps a warning echoing from a cycle of civilization we no longer remember. Vimanas, whether literal machines or symbolic vessels of divine knowledge, remain among the most enigmatic threads connecting myth and technology. They force us to confront the possibility that human history is not a story of invention, but of rediscovery, a chain of civilizations each inheriting fragments of a science too vast to preserve. The tragedy of ancient technology is not that it failed, but that it succeeded too well. Every civilization that soared too high eventually learned what happens when machines outrun morality. By the closing centuries of what we now call the Golden Age of the Gods, the Vimanas were no longer symbols of wonder. They had become instruments of power, of conquest, of surveillance. Records from the Mahabharata describe wars where cities shone brighter than 10,000 suns, where chariots rose vertically, turned with the precision of thought, and rained metal arrows upon their foes. The text is poetic, yes, but also disturbingly specific. One passage mentions a weapon that consumed all living things with a wind of death, leaving the earth pale. In modern laboratories, that phrase would translate into the effect of ionizing radiation. The ancients did not need to invent metaphors. They were describing what they saw. Eye collapse. The ruins of Dwarka, submerged off the coast of India, tell a quiet, salt-drowned story. Marine geologists have dated sections of it to over 9,000 years ago, long before the supposed dawn of civilization. Yet sonar mapping shows deliberate architecture, grid patterns, stone docks, landing zones, as if designed for machines that once came and went from the sea or sky. And then, silence. The collapse was sudden. The texts grow fragmented. Entire cities vanish from records. It is as if a technological blackout swept across the world, a self-inflicted amnesia. The survivors rebuilt, but without the machines. They remembered enough to fear the skies, to call thunder divine wrath, and to bury what remained beneath myth. What we now call religion may, in part, be a trauma response. Humanity trying to reinterpret the power it once wielded and lost. 2. The keepers of the code. Every few millennia, the pattern repeats. Knowledge rises, glows, and burns itself out. But fragments survive. Across the Himalayas, legends tell of Agastya Samhita, a sage who recorded the method of generating electricity using copper, zinc, and acid, a battery predating Volta by 2,000 years. In the Middle East, tales of Solomon's flying carpet sound absurd, until one considers it as a form of anti-gravity platform, woven not from silk, but magnetic lattices. Somewhere, hidden in the language of myth, there is data, encrypted physics encoded as prayer. If ancient engineers foresaw their destruction, perhaps they left breadcrumbs, scattered diagrams, harmonics, or sacred geometry as keys to rediscovery. Every civilization believes it's the first to touch the stars. Yet maybe we're just repeating an old cosmic script, one written long before our languages learned to call themselves modern. 3. Legacy of the lost engineers. The Vimanas are not just a curiosity of mythology, they are a mirror. Their story warns us that technology, without wisdom, becomes its own extinction event. The ancients may have built engines of light, but they lacked what we now call ethics. Today, humanity once again toys with gravity drives, zero-point energy, and quantum field resonance. And though our scientists wear lab coats instead of robes, their ambitions echo those of the ancient sky engineers. Maybe the real secret of the Vimanas was never their engines, but their silence. The last gift of the ancients was not a machine, but a warning. Do not awaken the storm that sleeps beneath your inventions. Because every civilization that learns to touch the sky eventually learns how to burn in it.